Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said I only wanted intimacy. I said not anymore. She texted later that night asking why I was always gone at night. I read it while sitting in my car, the screen glowing against the windshield, and realized that was the moment everything finally flipped. My name is Ethan Caldwell, 38, cybersecurity engineer. I work with systems that never sleep, threats that never announce themselves. I've always trusted patterns more than words. Patterns tell the truth even when people don't. Until recently, I thought my marriage was the one place where logic didn't apply. I was wrong. It started small enough to ignore. Emily would say she was working late, balancing a laptop on the couch while Hulu played in the background, volume low, like a heartbeat keeping the room alive. She'd scroll, smile at her phone, take breaks for what she called brain resets. Sometimes she'd leave for coffee runs after 10, coming back with that sharp, sweet smell of Starbucks on her breath and a story ready before I asked. She worked in social media. Trends, engagement, visibility. Attention was her currency. I told myself that explained everything. When she began training for an online fitness challenge, the nights changed. New routines. New discipline. New clothes folded carefully on the bed, all sleek fabric and muted confidence. Lululemon, she said once, like it was an afterthought. The workouts moved from mornings to evenings, then later. Always later. She accused me of being obsessed with sex when I asked why she flinched at my touch. Said I reduced everything to physical need. I didn't argue. I logged the reaction the way I log anomalies at work. Quietly. Without emotion. At night, after she fell asleep with her phone face down on her chest, it would light up. Notifications muted, but not silenced. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Patterns again. The same name appearing at the same hours. Voice notes sent when she thought I was in the shower. Laughter that didn't exist during the day. I started leaving the house instead of pressing for answers. The Tesla Model 3 slid out of the driveway without sound, like a thought she didn't notice forming. I told her I needed air. Space. Focus. All true, just incomplete. The night she texted asking why I was always gone. I was parked 3 blocks away, engine off, watching our bedroom light flicker through the curtains. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, because I was finally clear. She thought I wanted intimacy. What I wanted now was distance and control. I didn't confront her. That was the first real decision I made. Silence creates space, and space exposes habits. The house kept running on its old loop, Hulu murmuring at night, while Emily lay curled at the edge of the couch, phone angled just enough that I couldn't see the screen unless I wanted to. I never did. Wanting answers too early is how you lose leverage. At work, I began shifting my routines. Cybersecurity teaches you that breaches rarely come from force. They come from access, from familiarity, from someone being too comfortable. I stopped logging in from home, packed up my workstation, unplugged the cables I'd routed so carefully through our spare bedroom. The next morning, instead of setting up at the kitchen table, I drove to Best Buy and bought a new laptop. Different machine, clean environment, no shared network, no domestic noise bleeding into my head. Emily noticed the absence before she noticed the change. She asked why the desk was empty, why the room looked staged, like a model home nobody lived in. I told her I needed separation between work and life. She nodded, distracted, thumbs moving as if pulled by muscle memory. The nights stretched longer. Her workouts started ending after 10, sometimes 11. She'd come home flushed, carrying that post-exertion glow like a badge. She said the program was intense, community-driven, motivational. She talked about accountability partners and group chats and coaches who actually listened. I filed that away. People always tell you who they're replacing you with if you listen. I changed my evenings without announcing it. Gym sessions turned into full routines. Work calls filled the late hours. Sometimes I just drove. The city at night has a way of making everything honest. Traffic lights don't care about your explanations. They're red or green. Stop or go. She started tracking me digitally. Location checks disguised as concern. Messages that asked where I was, followed by heart emojis meant to soften the question. I replied when necessary. Short, neutral, always plausible. The goal wasn't to disappear. It was to become unreachable. One night, I came back later than usual. The house was dark. Her phone buzzed on the counter, lighting up the kitchen in quick pulses. A name flashed I'd seen enough times to recognize without reading. I didn't touch it. I didn't need proof yet. Proof is for courts. Control is for outcomes. I went to the spare bedroom and lay down on the bare mattress. No sheets. No scent of her shampoo. Just quiet. For the first time in months, my mind didn't race. I wasn't losing her. I was stepping out of her reach. And she could feel it. The first real shift happened the night I stopped coming home at all. I didn't announce it. I didn't pack a bag in front of her or leave a note. I just let the night carry me forward until there was no reason to turn back. After the gym, muscles buzzing and head clear, I drove past the house and kept going. I checked into a short-term rental near my office, the kind of place meant for consultants and people who didn't ask questions. One bedroom, white walls, clean lines, nothing that belonged to anyone else. I slept better than I had in months. In the morning, I didn't rush. I showered, dressed, and went out for breakfast alone. The place was quiet in that early hour way, the kind of silence that feels earned. At a Waffle House off the highway, I sat in a booth with my back to the wall and watched the world wake up. No notifications, no tension, just coffee, eggs, and the steady clink of plates. It felt like neutrality, like reset. Emily texted around 9. A casual message, asking if I'd crashed on a friend's couch. I replied that I'd taken an early meeting and stayed closer to work. True enough. She responded with a thumbs up and nothing else. That bothered her more than an argument ever would have. Over the next few days, I made the separation structural. Mail forwarded. Packages rerouted. Shared subscriptions left untouched, like artifacts from another life. At night, I didn't check if she was online. I didn't need to. Her patterns had already shifted. Mine had too. She started calling instead of texting, letting it ring longer each time. Leaving voicemails, she tried to sound casual in. She said she missed me, that the house felt strange without my routines, that she was worried. Concern is what people reach for when attraction stops working. I stayed calm, available, but distant. I answered when it made sense. I didn't explain my schedule. I didn't ask about hers. Silence does the work if you let it. One evening, she sent a photo. The living room. Hulu paused on the screen. A glass of wine on the table. The caption said she was waiting. I didn't reply until hours later, after I'd finished a late workout and showered. I told her I hoped she got some rest. That was the night she realized something was wrong. Not with us. With her grip on me. And once control starts slipping, people rush to replace it with urgency. Control shifts don't announce themselves. They show up as small behavioral glitches, like latency in a system that used to respond instantly. Emily started overcorrecting. More messages. Longer explanations. She told me about her days in advance now, as if transparency could substitute presence. I stayed steady. Predictable in tone. Unpredictable in access. One afternoon, I logged into a private network and did what I do best. Not to spy. To confirm. Digital environments leave residue. Fitness communities are especially sloppy with boundaries. Closed groups. Temporary links. Admin privileges passed around casually. I didn't touch her accounts. I didn't need to. The pattern was external, not hidden. The online marathon she talked about had a lead instructor who doubled as moderator. Charismatic. Constant engagement. Voice notes instead of text. Motivational language that blurred into intimacy if you didn't enforce edges. I'd seen this structure before. It's how cults start. And affairs. Emily's schedule tightened around his availability. Late workouts aligned with his live sessions. Her rest days matched his. When people outsource emotional regulation, their calendars sync without them realizing it. She came by the rental once, unannounced. I wasn't there. I'd stayed late at work, then gone to the gym. When I checked my phone afterward, there were missed calls stacked like warnings. A message saying she'd waited in the parking lot, unsure which car was mine now. I didn't correct her assumption. That night, I drove home briefly to grab documents I'd left behind. The house felt staged. Hulu was paused again, frozen mid-episode like a conversation waiting for someone to resume it. Her workout bag sat by the door, fresh clothes folded inside. Lululemon tags still attached, as if she wanted to be seen before she was touched. Her phone lit up on the counter. A voice message notification. I didn't listen, but I noticed the timestamp. Sent from a gym location across town. Not the one she used to go to. A new place. New routine. Physical now, not just digital. When she came home, I was already gone. She called later, voice controlled but tight. She said she didn't like not knowing where I was sleeping. I told her I was fine and asked if she was okay. She paused too long before answering. Silence gives people away faster than confession. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was finished being central in a life that ran better without me. And she was starting to understand that whatever she'd built online was about to be tested offline. The transition from digital to physical always leaves a paper trail. Not receipts, exactly. Timing. Gaps. Energy. Emily stopped pretending the workouts were only about discipline. Her nights came back charged, restless, like she'd borrowed momentum from somewhere else and hadn't learned how to put it down. She stopped asking where I was sleeping and started asking when I'd be home. That distinction mattered. People don't chase answers when they think they're winning. They chase when the field tilts. One evening, I pulled into the driveway just after midnight. I hadn't planned to. I needed a folder I'd left behind. The house was lit, but quiet. Hulu glowed in the living room, volume low, playing to no one. Her shoes were by the door, not the ones she used to wear. New, clean, heavier tread. Her phone was face down this time. No buzzing, no alerts. The absence told me more than any message ever had. I went to the spare room and took what I needed. As I passed the kitchen, I noticed a half-finished latte on the counter. Cold. Branded cup still intact. Starbucks. She used to drink coffee early. This was from late. Very late. I checked the timestamp printed near the lid. Bought 40 minutes before she got home. The gym she claimed to be at closed an hour earlier. That was enough. I didn't confront her when she came in. I left before she noticed the car. Control isn't about catching someone in the act. It's about letting them feel the consequences before they understand the cause. The next morning, I stuck to my routine. Gym. Shower. Breakfast alone. The Waffle House was empty except for a trucker nursing coffee and a waitress wiping the counter like she'd done it 1,000 times. Nobody asked me questions. That mattered more than comfort. Emily texted late that afternoon. She said she felt us slipping, that she didn't know where she stood with me anymore. She asked if I still wanted her. I read it twice, then put the phone down. Wanting had never been the problem. That night, she sent a longer message. Said she needed honesty. Said she felt judged. Said I'd changed. I replied hours later, after work, after training, after silence had done its work. I told her I was focusing on stability and needed space. She reacted immediately. Calls. Messages. A sudden urgency that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with access. The physical affair had begun, and she could already feel that it had cost her something she hadn't meant to trade. She tried to rebalance by giving me what she thought I'd been asking for all along. More availability, more physical closeness, more reassurance wrapped in warmth that arrived too late to be convincing. People do that when guilt starts competing with fear. I didn't reject her. I accepted everything politely, like a meeting I planned to leave early. When she invited me back for dinner, I came. I didn't stay the night. I listened more than I spoke. She talked about work, about engagement numbers, about how exhausting it was to be on all the time. She mentioned the fitness program only once, casually, as if it were already fading. That told me it wasn't. She watched me closely now. My reactions. My silences. The way I didn't reach for her the way I used to. She asked if something was wrong with me. I said I was tired. Which was true, just not in the way she meant. The next week, I moved the last of my equipment out of the house. Quietly. No announcements. No arguments. I replaced my aging laptop with a new setup I'd already configured at Best Buy, something powerful enough to handle my workload without tying me to any one place. The house was no longer a base. It was a location I visited. Emily noticed the physical absence immediately. She started sending photos again. Her outfits, her meals, late-night shots of empty rooms. Signals meant to re-establish relevance. I acknowledged them without engagement. A response is not the same as investment. She slipped once. Sent a message meant for someone else. Just a fragment. A time reference that didn't match anything we'd planned. She deleted it within seconds and followed with a joke. I didn't react. I didn't need to. The mistake mattered more to her than it did to me. That was the moment she understood that whatever she was building outside our marriage no longer had a safety net inside it. I adjusted my schedule further. Nights stayed full. Gym sessions ran long. I learned which places stayed open late, and didn't ask questions? Which corners of the city allowed you to exist without being observed? On mornings when I needed grounding, I went back to the same Waffle House and sat in the same booth, letting routine replace chaos. Emily started accusing me of withdrawal, said I was emotionally unavailable, said I was punishing her without explanation. I didn't correct her framing. Letting someone misdiagnose the problem keeps them from finding the cure. She thought I was pulling away out of resentment. The truth was simpler. I was already gone, and she was just starting to feel the absence where control used to live. The exposure didn't come with a confession. It came with exhaustion. Emily started losing energy at home. Not the performative tired she used to narrate online, but the kind that strips away rhythm. The kind that shows up when someone is living two lives and neither one feels stable anymore. She forgot small things, missed cues, asked the same questions twice. Control takes focus. Once it fractures, everything slips. She stopped posting late-night stories about working. The Starbucks cups disappeared from her photos, replaced by vague captions and recycled images. Offline stress bleeds into online silence faster than people expect. She tried to anchor herself by pulling me back into routine. Suggested shared dinners, movie nights, Hulu queued up with shows we used to watch when everything felt automatic. I came when it made sense. I left before it could turn into expectation. Consistency without commitment confuses people who rely on escalation. One night, she pressed harder, asked if there was someone else. That projection wasn't accidental. People reveal their own behavior when they run out of theories. I told her no, which was true. My life had gotten quieter, not crowded. She watched me the way someone watches a door they're afraid will close. Measured pauses, counted hours. I could see the calculations behind her eyes. She was trying to map my absence the way I'd mapped hers. The man from the gym started showing up in her language. Not by name, by reference. She compared me to people who live in the moment. Said some men understood presence better. That some connections didn't need explanation. I didn't argue. I let the comparison stand. Comparisons only work when both sides are available. The physical affair deepened, but it stopped being thrilling. Logistics replaced fantasy. Schedules had to align. Excuses had to be consistent. Desire had to compete with inconvenience. That's where these things collapse. She came to my place once without asking. Stood in the parking lot, unsure which floor I was on. I watched from the window and didn't move. Being seen without being reached changes the dynamic permanently. Later that night, she sent a long message. Said she felt invisible. Said she didn't recognize us anymore. Said she missed how close we used to be. I read it slowly. I didn't respond. The next morning, I went back to my routine. Gym, work, breakfast alone, the same booth, the same quiet. She thought she was losing me to someone else. What she was really losing was the version of me that waited. And once that version is gone, there's nothing left to negotiate with. The collapse started when her certainty ran out. Emily stopped managing the narrative and started chasing reassurance. She asked questions she already knew the answers to and listened for tones instead of words. That's what happens when attention stops working as currency. You realize how little leverage you actually have. She tried to pull me back with nostalgia. Sent old photos. Screenshots of messages from years ago, back when everything felt aligned and uncomplicated. She reminded me of trips we took, routines we built, jokes that belonged only to us. I acknowledged them without engaging. Memory isn't intimacy. It's evidence of time already spent. Her physical affair bled into her emotional state in ways she couldn't hide anymore. The confidence she borrowed from that connection started decaying. He existed in short windows and controlled environments. Gyms, late nights, places designed for performance, not presence. Outside of that, he had nothing to offer. She was starting to feel the difference. One evening, she asked me to come over and talk. Not text, not message. Talk. I agreed. When I arrived, the house felt unfamiliar. Hulu was off. The lights were bright, like she didn't trust the shadows anymore. She watched me carefully, waiting for a signal that I'd already decided not to send. She said she felt disconnected, that she didn't understand what had changed in me, that she needed clarity. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When she finished, I told her I'd changed my priorities, that I was building a life that felt stable and quiet, that I wasn't interested in negotiating closeness anymore. She tried to steer it toward intimacy, the way she always had when things slipped. I stepped back. Not dramatically, just enough to be unmistakable. The accusation she'd thrown at me months ago came back to her then, fully formed and heavy. She realized she'd been wrong about what I wanted. After I left, she spiraled. Messages came fast, then slower, then stopped altogether. Silence on her end felt different. Not strategic, not controlled, empty. The next morning, I went back to my routine. Gym, work, breakfast alone at the same Waffle House, the same booth, the same quiet that had become my baseline. The waitress didn't ask questions. She never did. Some spaces understand discretion instinctively. Emily texted later that day. Said she needed honesty. Said she deserved to know if there was someone else. I replied once. Told her no. Told her I was done explaining myself. That was when it finally landed for her. She hadn't lost me to another person. She'd lost access. And access, once gone, doesn't come back through emotion. The truth surfaced without a confession. It always does. Emily didn't admit anything outright. She didn't need to. The story leaked through behavior the way water finds cracks. She stopped asking me to come over and started asking if I was okay. Concern had replaced strategy. When people lose control, they switch languages. She tried to stabilize her outside connection, but it was already failing. I could hear it in her voice when we spoke briefly on the phone. Less excitement, more irritation. She complained about inconsistency, about canceled sessions, about how exhausting it was to keep explaining herself. The man who thrived on attention had grown bored once the secrecy turned into responsibility. She invited me over one last time. Said she wanted to be honest. I went, not out of hope, but closure. The house felt hollow. No background noise. No Hulu filling the gaps. Just rooms stripped of distraction. She told me she felt misunderstood, that she needed support and hadn't known how to ask. She said the fitness group had made her feel seen. She stopped there, watching my face for a reaction. I didn't give her one. When people pause mid-sentence, it's because they're waiting to see if they need to lie further. I told her I wasn't interested in auditing her explanations, that I'd already restructured my life, that I was calm, stable, and done negotiating proximity. I didn't accuse her. I didn't name him. I didn't need to. The absence of denial was enough. She cried then. Not dramatically. Quietly. The way people cry when they realize consequences don't respond to emotion. She said she was afraid of losing me. I told her she already had. The words landed clean, without heat. After that, things moved quickly. Logistics replace sentiment when the emotional currency runs out. I changed passwords, updated accounts, finalized a longer-term lease closer to work. I stopped stopping by the house. My routine held. Gym, work, nights that belonged only to me. On mornings when I needed silence before the day took shape, I went back to the Waffle House and sat with my coffee until my thoughts settled into order. Emily sent fewer messages. Shorter. Neutral. The outside relationship collapsed under its own weight. The man she'd leaned on disappeared once he realized there was nothing left to win. She had accused me of only wanting intimacy. What she hadn't understood was that intimacy requires presence. And I had withdrawn mine completely. There was only one thing left to do, and it didn't involve explanation. I ended it without drama, which confused her more than any confrontation ever could have. There was no final argument, no list of grievances, no moment where I raised my voice or demanded accountability. I simply formalized the distance that already existed. Paperwork, addresses, a quiet closing of loops that had been open too long. She asked once if this was really it. Not angrily, not defensively, just tired. I told her I was done living inside explanations, that I needed a life that didn't require constant monitoring or correction. She didn't argue. There was nothing left to leverage. I moved forward cleanly. The rental became permanent. My schedule stayed mine. Work thrived once it wasn't bleeding into domestic tension. I trained consistently, slept better, thought clearer. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was functional. Sometimes, late at night, I'd drive without a destination, letting the city pass by in silence. The car moved smoothly, no noise, no resistance. I realized how much of my old life had been friction disguised as intimacy. Emily faded out gradually. Fewer messages. Neutral updates about logistics. Occasional attempts at small talk that never landed. The outside relationship she'd built evaporated once it required daylight. That didn't surprise me. It never does. The house we'd shared went dark more often. Hulu no longer played in the background to simulate connection. When I stopped by once to pick up the last of my things, the rooms felt smaller, like they'd been waiting for an audience that never came back. On mornings when I needed grounding, I returned to the same booth at the Waffle House. Coffee, eggs, the same waitress who never asked personal questions. She didn't need context. She understood routine, stability, silence that meant something. Emily sent one final message weeks later, not asking for reconciliation, just acknowledgement. She said she finally understood what I'd meant when I stopped asking for closeness. I read it once and didn't reply, not out of cruelty, out of completion. She had accused me of only wanting intimacy. What she never saw was that intimacy without respect is just access. And access, once revoked, doesn't get renegotiated. I didn't win anything by leaving quietly. I just stopped losing. And sometimes, that's the most decisive move you can make. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.